Okay, hi everybody. George Donnelly here. I'm here with John Tyner and Jonathan Baird. And today we're talking about intellectual property and the libertarian position on it, or should I say the libertarian positions. But first, let's talk about the happenings with the Free Keene Squad on Colbert. Did you guys both catch that?
Yeah, I saw the clip
Yes.
that you posted. My favorite, I like the Africist.
He's a nice guy. Garrett is a nice guy. I'm
No, I'm
Facebook
sure
friends
he
with
is.
him.
That hair is awesome, though. Like, seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I've always wanted to kind of admire the Free Keene guys and support them. And I visited Keene a few years ago, and a Robin Hooder saved me from a parking ticket. But I have to say, like this, what they're doing is just off the hook. And I think when you're running around harassing people, getting in their face all day, and I think at some level that has to rise to. I think there's a line that you cross where it's no longer free speech, and now it's aggression or a credible threat of aggression. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, I
I
mean, oh, go ahead.
I really think if all they were doing was putting money in the meters, I have no problem with that. But this following people around, um, they do seem somewhat threatening. And I mean, just because I do not want to be followed around all day at work, and I understand that they want that they're trying to counter state power, but they can do that simply by putting change in the meters. I don't know. Colbert really made them out to be doofuses. It's the best, and I'm not sure that they are as bad as they were made out to be in that report.
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, the people who were doing the harassment, was that the three guys that they showed on there? I mean, was that clear? Does anybody know?
Well, I think there are a bunch of guys doing harassment, but they just picked out the ones that most suited, their comedy agenda.
Yeah, yeah, and I kind of felt bad for those guys. I mean, I don't know how they got talked into going on Colbert, but I mean, if you're going to get interviewed by Colbert or Stewart, that's what they do. You could tell a lot of those quotes, those guys were trying to make a point, and the quotes were just taken out of context. But I mean, you have to know when you go on those shows, that's what they do. They make people look stupid no matter what you say.
Well, I don't understand why James, the mastermind, why couldn't he have washed his hair and combed it? Why couldn't he have prepared talking points? Like why could like they should have known, or I'm sure they knew ahead of time that it was a setup. Why wouldn't So how could he allow himself to be recorded saying, "Yeah, Free Keen's not really about freeing anybody per se," and that how could he allow that to happen?
Well,
Um,
that and who talked him into dressing up in that outfit?
Oh, the Robin Hood outfit was just
Yeah, I mean,
it made us all look bad.
how could you? I mean, I don't understand how he even got talked into. I wouldn't dress up like that if my wife asked me to, just for fun. Like,
well, then and Cantwell with he just capped it all off with his pistol and running around saying like it's never gonna stop,
yeah,
and that video that just seeing video where he shoots up the American flag and then his muzzle control is like totally non-existent. I mean, he like swipes himself and the cameraman with with an assault rifle. Like, I saw it when he first put it on YouTube, and I thought, man, why would you? Like if I screwed up my muzzle control that badly, I would I would destroy that video because that's just so embarrassing.
was that the deal? Was that like a YouTube video of his, just that was a standalone, separate thing?
Yeah, yeah, and Colbert grabbed it and put it in there.
Okay, because I was gonna say, as part of that, least of his problems in that piece.
Hmm.
But no, I mean, I like I said, I felt bad for those guys, but and I felt bad for what was the first guy's name? With the guy who didn't wash his hair?
James.
Oh, James. Because I felt bad for him because when I did those interviews, if you're not prepared and you kind of stare off in space to think about an answer, you look terrible. So I mean, that's to your point. Have some talking points ready. If you actually try and think about it and answer a question, you stare off into space, it just looks awful. I felt for the guy because he was kind of off in the weeds as soon as he was like, "Oh, we're not here to free people," and then he kind of realized, "Uh-oh, I stepped in it."
Yeah. And I think on the flip side, in their defense, I think that it's hard, and as we've discussed on this show, it's hard to identify constructive actions that are really going to get you closer to liberty. And so, so libertarians, we often fall into this thing about talking about generalities and principles and not really applying it. And so they fell into parking meters, and I think it makes them look a little bit small-minded, but at the same time, I think it's a legitimate criticism. Like, okay, well, at least we're doing something. What have you done?
Yeah,
What do you guys think about that?
I'm not going to fault those guys for putting money in the meters, but I think to Jonathan's point earlier, the big problem is that they're going around harassing people. I mean, didn't the Free Keeners get in trouble recently for putting money in the meters?
Yeah. I mean, the city councilman says, "Oh, we don't care if they put money in the meters," but actually they do. They got up in arms about that part as well.
And I think if they hadn't been harassing people and just putting money in the meters and then drawing attention to the fact that the state was trying to prevent them from doing this nice thing, I think they would have had a tremendous argument in their own favor. But they kind of shot themselves in their foot by having these videos out there of them going around harassing these guys.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have a lot of sympathy for the meter maids, but at the same time, you're not going to win any points with anybody by harassing them all day long.
Although, to the credit of Free Keene, if they could get an Iraq War veteran to say that to make Keene more of a battleground than Iraq, that's like a big point for the resistance there.
I think that was a little bit of satire on their part, but he did obviously quit his job over their harassment. So,
well, he lasted a year. It couldn't have been that bad, right?
Well,
no.
I don't know. I could last a long time, being harassed, but a year of harassment, I might quit a job.
You've got to imagine somebody who's fought in Iraq is able to put up with quite a bit.
But I think and there are people out there saying, well, all these guys complaining about Free Keene, they never did anything, right? But I think that a lot of this confrontationalism, this Cantwellism, this is a lot of negative energy. It's an attempt to jumpstart the process by doing negative things, polarizing things that really grab attention, and then because they want to jump ahead, they want to make a splash. But I think this is evidence that it just comes right back to bite you in the butt. And I think that the counterpoint to that is the kind of things that you, John, Jim Babb, and I, and many other people were doing in 2010 with the TSA. We didn't, go out there and harass anybody. We didn't say insane things to grab attention. We were all quite reasonable, and we grabbed a lot of attention for the cause, and I felt respected. I got a lot of skepticism in the interviews that I did with the mainstream media, but I frequently felt respected. And a Philadelphia area newspaper did a very complimentary profile on Jim Babb, and the Washington Post, did a little bit on me as well, and it was complimentary. CNN named me one of the most intriguing person of the day or something on Thanksgiving in 2010. I don't remember if you got anything like that, John. But
in the LA Times here, there was a reporter who actually followed me around she not followed me around, but actually called me back a couple times. I had to cut her off at one point, but she did an article that I thought was really fair and I thought was actually really nice.
Yeah, so excellent. I didn't know about that. So I think that if you do things reasonably and organized and you're not a jerk, you can still have a giant impact without it coming back to bite you in your butt. In fact, you can have the mainstream media saying, you're an okay guy with an interesting, reasonable message. And, so that's the counterpoint I offer to those people.
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for just being knowledgeable about what's going on in the world too. I mean, when I was doing this interview with this lady, she just kind of asked me about some general topics, and I, told her what I thought about various things, and she actually said at one point, you seem like you really keep up on the news and follow this stuff. And I just, I told her, yeah, I try to. You got to be informed if you're going to have an opinion about this stuff.
Hmm. So I thought, maybe we were delving the show a little bit too much into all the standard libertarian topics and whatnot. So I thought maybe, we should discuss some current events a little bit. The Free Keene thing, and then Obama's immigration thing, in which he's basically using executive power, executive orders to kind of scale back enforcement, against undocumented immigrants. And I think the other one was to offer a route to legalization for undocumented people who are parents or direct relatives of United States citizens.
Yeah, like if you've been here for 5 years and you're willing to start paying your taxes, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys think about that?
Being a sort of minarchist and what some people call a nationalist libertarian, I'm against the open border policies, and so I'm going to be unpopular here on this show. But honestly, what Obama's doing is just going to set these people up to be deported when the next president comes in. If the next president is a Republican, they could completely turn around and say, oh, all these people signed up for this thing Obama created. The executive order he made is gone. Here's my new executive order. They're all deported. And that, I think, is what's going to happen if a Republican wins. And so it's going to bite them in the butt.
Well, wasn't it the great Ronald Reagan who extended that amnesty that really helped a ton of people? I mean, a Republican.
Not great in my opinion, and I think it was a mistake because it led to even more illegal immigration.
Jonathan, you're not going to pull out a Confederate flag on us, are you?
No, it's not a Confederacy thing. It's a my problem with open borders has to do with the ability of libertarianism to survive. Libertarianism is a cultural affectation of Western society, and if we allow people into our society, large numbers, an invasion, in fact, of people who do not believe in libertarianism, we are not going to change their minds. They're not coming here to vote libertarian. If these people were coming here to vote for Republicans, the Democrats would have shut the border down 10 years ago.
That's probably true. But I think the argument...
They're trying...
No, go ahead.
Oh, the whole point of this is to reinvigorate the minority vote for Democrats. It is basically the population is getting older, more conservative. As the population gets more conservative, they see the writing on the wall. I mean, they may have won the last 8 years, but sooner or later they're going to lose just by demographics. And if we pull in this invasion of people who are basically pulling a coup on the rest of us, they'll vote for more statist policies. And I'm a pragmatic libertarian. I cannot see them ever voting for libertarian policies because it's just not culturally part of the Latin culture. I just don't. Libertarianism is an outgrowth of basically Northern European political ideology. And George, you may have more of an idea of what's going on in Latin America than I do.
Well, and George has a history degree. I think I'm going to sit back and let you guys argue this out. This is going to get interesting.
Well, I have a master's degree in American history. So
right, I'm going to mute my mic and watch this go.
Well, actually, in Colombia, where I have a considerable amount of time spent, the government is extremely oppressive, in terms of business regulation, but the average person is, although they're not aware of libertarianism as a concept, are very libertarian because they resist all kinds of government taxes and regulations and things as a matter of course, as a matter of habit. I'll give one example. I was in a taxi a couple of weeks ago coming home from the supermarket, and a traffic cop had stopped a car, and the taxi was going around, and the traffic cop took a step back, and the taxi almost hit him. And so the traffic cop said some insult at him, called him a beast, yeah? And so the taxi driver stopped the car in the middle of the street, got out, and got in this traffic cop's face and demanded an apology from him. Now, that guy in the United States would have been dead. But in Colombia, he bullied he browbeat the traffic cop into submission, and then later on even went to the police station and received an apology for it. And so I think at the bottom of a lot of this stuff is just raw power. And here the people aren't as docile, and so they still have a lot of that raw power. I think it's interesting that, your take on it, Jonathan, that it's basically a vote packing scheme. And I think it's also curious how it can be that, both Jonathan and I can be libertarians and can be so close on so many things, and yet his position on this is like miles away from mine. I almost feel like, how could someone say that, Because I think
you're
open
a
borders...
philosophical libertarian.
No, I apply my libertarian. For me, a philosophical libertarian is a person who's like, well, it'd be a great idea if, and then just leads an ordinary life. But I attempt to implement, Yeah.
Well, the way I'm putting this philosophical, I'm a pragmatic libertarian. I want libertarian. I want to do the thing that will make philosophical libertarian says, well, if we just get rid of the borders, magically the people crossing the borders are going to become libertarian and believe in our system and not take from our society. And I don't see that. I don't see these libertarian people. I know I work in an industry full of Hispanics, and the people there are not libertarians. They're not libertarian minded. Whether you have to know what libertarianism takes a certain amount of education to grasp libertarianism. Even if you're socially libertarian, sometimes you're not culturally libertarian. You don't vote libertarian. You think, oh, well, these people are offering me something, and I'm going to vote for these people. And I think that if we allow an army of people who are not going to vote in a diverse fashion, then we're basically inviting an army in to continue the status policies of the state as we have it, rather than to uplift the non-state policies.
I think it's the right thing to do to open the border. I think it's criminal to keep people out who would like to trade on a mutual agreement basis with people on this side, on your side of the line. And I think that overall it contributes, having people come in, being able to enter and leave freely, contributes to greater economic growth. I don't really care about, I'm not that concerned about, how many of them are going to vote libertarian, because nobody votes libertarian already. It's not like it's going to make a big difference. And I don't care how they vote, because my strategy is about, it depends on other things. And I think that if we're smart, if you guys want to vote and run for office, that's cool, and you should be applauded for that. But at the same time, we can use market means to kind of subvert, people's explicit beliefs by involving them in things like mutual aid societies and businesses and co-ops that are implicitly libertarian, implicitly anarchist, and that over time, show people that there's a better way. I don't know.
I'm curious.
What do you think, John?
Jonathan, do you think are there a particular set of policies that you think that people coming across the border are going to vote for that you're against? I mean, I guess kind of what I'm driving at is, are you afraid these people are going to overwhelm the welfare system? Because I think the anarchist position is basically that if the government didn't exist, it wouldn't be there for them to vote for these policies in the first place.
I don't think they're going to overwhelm. If I thought that they were going to overwhelm the welfare system, I would be all for them coming across the border. I mean, I would want as many people across the border as possible.
I like that.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to perpetuate. They are going to perpetuate the state as it is for another 50 to 60 years. Maybe, I mean, continue the trend toward a more police state type society. And I think that.
I don't know.
Go ahead, John.
I don't see that. I mean, to me, it seems like freedom is something people universally want. I'm curious what policies you think they're going to pursue. Like, I mean, do you think they're going to vote for more business regulation? Do you think they're going to vote for more police on the streets? I mean, that's.
I think what will happen is they will replace African Americans as the minority, the go-to minority for the Democrats. The Democrats, even though the Republicans are horrible, they're not as bad on liberty issues as the Republicans. At least the Republicans have a liberty wing of the party. The Democrats don't actually have a liberty wing of the party.
So I mean,
and I think that if they go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, go ahead and ask what you were going to.
I was just going to say. I mean, so is this kind of the Democrats or the party of, oh, this business did this evil thing that we don't like, and so we're going to regulate them further? I mean, is that kind of what you think? Is that the kind
Yes,
of
I think we'll continue to see more and more regulations, and I would like to see fewer regulate. I mean, I would like to see business freed. I'd like to see the marketplace freed, and we're never going to get. I don't think it's neither here nor there at this point.
Yeah, no.
But I think Jonathan. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
I was just curious which if there was a particular position, like I said, if it was welfare or something else that you thought they were going to vote for en masse. Because, like I said, as far as welfare goes, my position is welfare shouldn't exist in the first place. So the problem isn't necessarily that these people are coming here to vote for that thing; it's that welfare exists in the first place. I
don't have a problem with them using welfare. If I thought they were going to use as much welfare as possible, I would be all for them coming.
Yeah, I think
because it would be the demise of the society.
We're in agreement on that. If people want to use welfare, they should take as much as they possibly can.
Yes,
well,
Jonathan, everyone should get a student loan.
They all come over, Jonathan. They all vote party line Democrat. They pass more and more welfare. They get welfare. Of course, these things are a little bit stereotypical. Yeah, I'm saying this in jest here. But and this plays into your plan of collapsing the government by exhausting it of resources, Jonathan. So you should be for this.
Well, let's be clear. That wasn't Jonathan.
I don't think they're going to exhaust the resources. I don't think they're going to get on welfare.
Well, then let's bring more so that they can exhaust those resources.
We're just trying to do something about the end of the state.
All right. Well, hey, let's get into intellectual property, yeah?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I was curious. You kind of took this position a few weeks ago. I mean, I assume it's kind of a result of you being an author now, or at least being a published author.
Well, I've always thought that I would be an author sooner or later. It's just a matter of like working up the courage and the skills and all that. And so I've always been a little bit ambivalent about the topic of intellectual property. But I'll just lay it out real quick. Like, well, obviously the pro-IP side is about protecting innovation and, people who create innovations or works of art or whatever, being able to profit from them exclusively for a certain amount of time. And the anti-side is that now intellectual property, which is easily copyable, because it's easily copyable, I, the creator, can have my copy, and you, the pirate,
Look at you biasing the audience right during the introduction.
You, the pirate, can make a copy of my book or my patent or my invention or whatever, my schematics,
Well,
and you can have your copy, and I can have my copy, and so you haven't deprived me of my copy. So hey, we're all good, you know. And then it's cool, totally cool if you, Mr. Pirate, you know, commercialize my work, you know, and profit from it, even though all you did was copy it.
so it's
So,
kind of a semantic thing, but I just want to be clear. It's not the fact that it's easily copyable, but infinitely copyable.
um, well, it doesn't have to be infinite because according to them, all the defining the like the Center for Stateless Society crowd, the left libertarian crowd, according to them, if they can make a copy without denying me my copy, you know, then it's all good. So even if they just make one copy, you know, if that's all you can make, that's cool because I haven't been denied mine.
Okay, fair enough. I mean,
And so
I don't
what they talk about is it's not scarce, you know,
yeah,
and it's not rivalrous. Sorry,
I
go
just
ahead.
yeah, you're right. I just wanted to make clear it doesn't have it's not necessarily whether it's hard or easy to do. I think you hit it more accurately on the head is if they can make a copy regardless of how easy or difficult it is without depriving you of your copy. I think that's what you were getting at. I think you said it better than I did.
So what do you think about this stuff, John?
So I'm
Well, obviously, you're talking to John. I'm
John,
sorry.
yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so I mean, I write software for a living, so this is kind of why I was interested to talk about this. So where this comes up in my line of work is if you come up with an idea and, you know, completely independent of you, I come up with the same idea, the first one of us to make it to the patent office gets to deny the other one. So that's kind of where my problem comes in with, and that's why I fall on the anti-IP side. And I think
But
I think the argument against IP makes logical sense to me as well, but I think that's kind of where it is for me.
But I don't think it's I don't think any idea by itself is copyrightable or, you know, whatever intellectual propertyizable. I don't think that that's actually the case.
There's
I
some
think it's only a tangible expression,
no,
right?
there's
Like I can't control the idea of a novel, but I can control my novel.
well, I mean,
You
at
know.
least here in the States, there's patents on software. You can patent the way a piece of software works. You can patent an algorithm. Well, maybe
But
not an
that's the
algorithm.
tangible expression of something. That's not
The
just the
problem is,
idea. So somebody else could come up with a different algorithm to do the same thing, right?
Right, but what I'm saying is if you and I at the same time come up with the same algorithm and one of us beats the other one to the patent office, the guy who gets there second gets denied. You know, he came up with
So
the idea
what?
completely independently. It doesn't make
So
sense
what?
that the guy who comes up with it first gets to go out and deny everybody else the right to use that idea.
Why? Why not? Let's say let's say you spent 5 years and $10 million in venture capital to come up with, or even your own savings to come up with this algorithm.
All right. Well, I started a year earlier and spent 6 years and $20 million to come up with it, and we both came up with it on the same day. I mean, who has a greater claim to the idea?
Well, whoever registers it first, right? I mean, what other factor would you use to determine who gets it?
But that's the argument against IP, right? It's an idea.
well,
You
this
wouldn't be able to go and
No,
patent.
no, no. But the algorithm, an idea would be an algorithm to do X, and the patentable thing is your algorithm, you know. And so you could do it one way, and I could do it another way, and both are patentable, you know, like they're separate things.
No, I understand what you're saying. I don't think that's the way it works. At least not that's not the way it works in software. You know, you can two people can come up with the exact same way of doing the exact same thing. I mean, it happens all the time.
and it happens in software because the grammar of software is limited. In writing, it's completely different. You cannot copyright an idea, a written idea. You can only copyright the execution of the idea.
Mm-hmm.
I know that. I've fought a copyright case and lost with ITV in Britain, which they have deep pockets and I don't.
That's how the
So,
court system
of
works.
course, well, I did deny them their movie rights in North America. So and their little television show they were going to put on the Sci-Fi Channel. So I'm happy about that anyway. I took away a few $1 million from them.
So what's your position on intellectual property, Jonathan? Where do you stand
Well,
on issues?
obviously, I'm for intellectual property. I believe that the idea that it can be copied infinitely easily means nothing because property, the inherent value, the inherent thing within property is value. It's value that's important, not whether you can copy it or not. For instance, if gold was just a rock, it would be valueless. It's the value within so the value when you copy something infinitely, you decrease the value of the person who created it. And I know that people are going to say, "Oh, it's the value of labor value," but that value is real value because other people covet it. So it's not. And this is this is one of those topics that I get a little bit upset about because I've had the problems with it. If we look at any information and all information, I mean, people want to say that information should be free, information, but I just don't agree with that. I mean, if you give me specifics, the software, I don't know enough about software and I think it's because of the limited grammar within the coding programs that two people could come up with the same idea at once. This doesn't really happen in literature at all. And
Well,
don't have me on the spot here.
I think where the anti-IP people come from is the Austrian School of Economics, and they define property as something that is scarce, and something that is rivalrous, like a piece of land. Like I can have it and use it, and it's scarce. There's only that piece of land, or there's a limited amount of land on the planet. And it's rivalrous in the sense that if I'm in there, if we both try to use it at the same time, like we got a rivalry there, like we're gonna clash, So in order to have rational economic relationships, it has to be either mine or yours, And I think that that's an interesting definition of property, but I think that it's very convenient in that it completely cuts out intellectual property. It almost seems like, it's like extremely convenient, All property is legitimate except intellectual property, So all you inventors and innovators and genetic engineers and authors and writers and movie makers, screw you, Spend $100 million to make it, and then I can do whatever I want with it, once you release it. And if you don't like it, then you have to DRM it up, and it's all your problem, And it's almost like a might makes right situation, because I could be a small time artist, which I am, and I could scrimp and save for years and produce something that's pretty decent, has some market value, and then some chump with big pockets. Deep Pockets comes along and is like, oh, that's a nice novel. I'm gonna slap my name on it, or even leave my name. I'm gonna put it up on Amazon, or I'm gonna sell it, or whatever. And tough luck, guy. I know you wrote it, but it's non-rivalrous, so tough luck.
Do you think that guy would last very long if you could prove? I mean, if you could mount a media campaign and basically be like, this guy stole my idea. I mean, do you think people would buy that? I mean, just because it was cheap?
Well, it's not even that he stole my idea, John. He stole the tangible expression of my idea, my finished work.
No, that's what I'm saying, is if you go out and point out to this guy and you can say, hey, this guy stole this work and slapped his name on it, and it's totally mine, and I can show that, do you think that guy would last very long? Do you think people would give him money just because he's charging a cheaper price than you are?
Very likely.
Yeah.
People will buy whatever. I mean, if he says I did it first, and even if you have proof, many people aren't going to believe you. I mean, I've had just.
Go ahead. I was just going to
John,
ask.
I missed what you said.
Yeah, sorry. I was just going to ask George. So, do you think maybe the model for authors ought to be you put something out there, and if people like it, they pay you to write the next book rather than paying you for the last one?
I think if that was going to be a successful model for filling market needs here, that would probably already exist. Um, like somebody said to me, "Oh, well, you just Kickstarter everything, and you put the book idea up there on Kickstarter, and if people pay you to buy, you say like you need $10,000 in order to make the project worth it for you, and if you get the 10,000, then you do it." Well, first of all, like selling a book idea is a whole lot harder than selling a real book. And second of all, what do you do if you're not a marketing guy? What do you do if you don't have the ability to pull off a Kickstarter? What do you do if like I found out today, I tried to start a Kickstarter. To run a Kickstarter on Kickstarter, .com, you have to get signed up with Amazon Payments. And just want to say to Amazon Payments, you guys are jerks. And I am everybody in Amazon is my best friend except for Amazon Payments. And so I can't use Kickstarter. I'm locked out of it. In fact, Kickstarter only works for a U.S. audience, and it's not going to work for everybody in the United States. Now, there's Indiegogo, but still, I think the point remains.
Sounds like there's a market need for international Kickstarter.
Here's the
there are many, 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 many ways to bring a book to market. And so to say, well, I redefine property so that now I can do whatever I want with it, and now you have to go this one tiny narrow route in order to bring your book to market, and then you're limited to only that $10,000 or whatever. That's like tone deaf. That makes no sense. How is that going to fly in the real world?
Well, and what about these studies that show that people who pirate mutant buy more?
Well, like for example, I'm not like let's say I put a book out there and people copy it and share it and they're like, "Haha, we copied your book and put it on BitTorrent. Screw you!" Like I don't care. That's fine. I don't mind. I'm not like slapping DRM on my books and putting locks on it and hiding it in the ocean, in a treasure chest or some stuff like that. What offends me about the anti-IP people is they say that I could spend years developing something and then it's not really mine. And that is so offensive to me, to say it's not really yours because it's non-rivalrous and easily copyable.
Well, they're talking about that, the idea, right? So I mean, the argument they're making is that you expressed some idea on paper, and now they have this idea in their head, and somehow you're claiming ownership of the thoughts in their head, right? I mean, that's
no, but that's a red herring. I'm not all I'm claiming. All I'm saying is I created that. That's mine. I brought that unique combination of words into creation, and they're saying their position is that. Once it's out there, because it's non-rivalrous and all that, that they own it as much as they own the tangible expression as much as I do. That it doesn't really belong to me.
Here, the core of the whole thing is the definition of property, and the fact that we can define property as anything means that property is not an absolute. I mean, property is not there is no absolute properties. So because we can define property any way we want to define property, we can define intellectual property as a culture, as a society. Because I don't think it actually, I mean, without human beings, there is no idea of property. It's not an absolute. So there's no philosophical, basis for property.
Me of J. Neil Schulman's post about this, which I found interesting. He basically says all property is intellectual, because until I get the idea in my head that something can be or is property or is my property or is your idea or is your property, that it's just a thing, that it's actually the intellectual aspect that makes anything property.
So George, I'm not going to ask this question because I'm trying to pin you into some pigeonhole. I'm just trying to understand your position. When you say tangible expression, are you saying the fact that you put some particular set of words into some particular order, or that there's actually these words in a PDF file or on a piece of paper. Or because what I'm driving at is if somebody memorizes your book and then tells it to the next guy who copies it down on paper, do you own that tangible expression then? I mean, you kind of see what I'm asking?
Um,
Because I mean, even a PDF file, I mean, it's not really a tangible expression. I mean, I guess I could store it on my hard drive and it's physical at some point, but
but I don't think tangible in this case means necessarily touchable. I mean, I think it
and
means like a
that's what I'm asking.
specific,
I'm just
like
trying to, I'm trying
like
to
if there's like if you have an idea for a story about a cat that gets lost in a closet, there are an infinite number of potential expressions of that idea, and i.e., you could write a million different stories about a cat that gets lost in a closet. But my particular arrangement of words, it seems to me, I'm open. I'm open on this. I'm waiting for somebody to convince me to the opposite. Um, I just can't find my way to grasp this Austrian economics thing. But it seems to me that I brought that arrangement of words into being. It exists as a unique and identifiable entity, whether it's on paper or not.
so
And so it's mine. No matter what you do with it, it's mine. Do I have the right to use aggression to stop people from doing something with it? I don't think so. But at the same time, for you to tell me it's not mine, that makes no sense to me, and it seems counterintuitive and insulting.
so I
Does that
think
answer your question?
yeah, I think it does, and I think hearing you talk is actually kind of explaining Jonathan's earlier point where he was talking about software. I mean, maybe the problem is that we're talking about something like writing a novel where there's basically an infinite combination of words you could put together that make a novel. I mean, even if I wrote the same one as you and then extended it by 20 pages, it's technically something different. So, I mean, maybe we need to be talking about something more like software where the grammar is so short that it's very easy for people to come up with the exact same idea and the exact same tangible expression of that idea
But
at the
since we
same
can
time.
define property as whatever we want to define, we can define property within software as different from property within literature or music because there are so few ways to express yourself within software.
I guess, but I mean, the argument is that software is basically a language, right? It's just
But
words in it.
is it really true that there are? I mean, I'm no programming expert. I have done some programming, but I don't accept this idea that there's only a limited number of ways. For example, any given algorithm program. First of all, it's probably going to be thousands of lines of code. And so even if both, let's say there are two competing algorithms, made at the same time, within those 10,000 lines of code, the algorithm or the program could be implemented in different ways using different syntax.
So I think
One could do it in C plus, and one could do it in Ruby on Rails.
so. Maybe
And
we're talking about two different things then. I mean, we could talk about a sorting algorithm that only takes 10 or maybe 20 lines to implement.
Mhm.
So it's very easy to conceive of, if 10 people, I mean, there's what, 7 billion people on the planet? I mean, even if 10 of them come up with the same idea and they implement it in the same language, there's a very high possibility that they're all going to come up with, or, some number of them are going to come up with the same idea and express it in the same way.
But
So
I don't. Is a 10-line piece of code patentable?
maybe not,
Because
but
I think
but I guess
that
my
to
point is
patent
why is
something, it has to raise to a certain limit. It has to have some level of uniqueness, some high level of value add to it.
I think well, and there are algorithms that are very that do very interesting things that don't take a lot of code to express them. So I guess that's kind of the road I was going to go down is 10, where is the line? Is it at 10 lines? Is it at 15 lines? Is it at 20? Why is 20 different from 25? I mean, where do you
It's
set
a
the
matter
limit?
of convention.
Well, so
I think that
limit,
a
and I
lot
think
of things. Sorry, I'm sorry, John. I
no, it's
talked over
okay. I
you.
was just going to say the limit is arbitrary, and in my mind, if you're just going to make up some arbitrary number like 20 or 30 or 100, it just doesn't make sense to me as a philosophical or ideological position.
But
If you're going to
property is
set it
not
at 20,
ideological. Property can't be philosophical because it doesn't exist outside our cultural understanding of property.
But I
So it
think
has to be.
whatever we're going to define it as ought to be universal, I guess is kind of what I'm getting at. So, I mean, in my mind, 500 lines, 495 lines, why is one different from the other?
I
Why doesn't
think
5 lines have the same protection as 500 lines?
I think the search for universal things like that is often misguided, because a lot of things are a matter of social and cultural convention or a matter of context. I think a lot of times we libertarians, especially ANCAPs, we get kind of lost in this search for objectivity and this search for axioms, universal rules. And like the nuclear weapon debate often falls into this problem. Like people say, well, the right to keep and bear arms should be unrestricted. And on the other side, they say, well, the community should have some say in that. And what if it's a nuclear weapon? Do you have a right to keep and bear a nuclear weapon in your home? And the real out there ANCAPs will say you absolutely do. And that's one of those things where you take anarcho-capitalism or these principles like beyond to a their logical extreme, but it's illogical, and it offends the sensibilities. Why? Because it's like you're cutting things like this when they should be cut like this. It's a cultural thing. Like the universal rule is people should make their own decisions. And how does that apply to this? Communities should be able to make their own decisions. And so in community A, if they say it's okay for people to have nuclear weapons, well then cool. That's cool there. But in community B, if they decide that it's not cool, then it's not cool there, And so I think in that sense, we have to step back a little bit from all this universality and stick to conventions, contexts, and also examine conventions and cultural history, like the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and all that stuff is kind of like the cultural evolution of things that happened, like with the Magna Carta and all that. And so I think that whether it's 20 or 500 lines or 5 different communities will make a judgment call on.
So,
Well, George, you're starting to sound like a pragmatic libertarian.
yeah, I yeah, in my mind, that I don't see how that's gonna fly. Like I said, I don't see why 400 lines is any less. The idea of 400 lines is the idea behind 400 lines of code is any less deserving of protection than the idea behind 500 lines.
But it already flies. It already flies because everything in our world works that way. People make judgment calls. They set arbitrary limits.
Well, I'll say in an ANCAP society, it won't work. There won't be any IP. But I'm not advocating for an ANCAP society, so.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily true because I think in an ANCAP or other kind of anarchist society, you wouldn't have a government protecting intellectual property, which is actually quite fine by me. But you could have, for example, all the artists could band together in an artistic association. Cabal. Junta. Yeah, power to the artists. Yeah. And then they could, when works are released, they could say, please don't copy this. And people who copy it could face sanctions, could face opprobrium, ostracization. There could be an artist association could educate society to understand the importance of the arts and of preserving the money flow for the arts, and so that people who pirate works would be looked down on, and people wouldn't tolerate that on a cultural level.
Something like that exists among stand-up comedians, doesn't it?
Does it?
Yeah, like I've heard stories about like people who steal jokes. Like it's basically the first time you do it, somebody pulls you aside and says, "Hey, that's not cool." And if you keep on doing it, basically one night.
Sorry, I think I froze.
Oh yeah, I
I
think
froze as well.
yeah. But yeah, I
Can
was
you
gonna say.
repeat the bit about the stand-up
No,
comedians,
so
John?
I was saying, the first time somebody pulls you aside and says, "Hey, that's not cool. Don't do that." The second time you get a punch in the nose, and the third time you do it, basically a bunch of guys pull you out after the show is over and beat the crap out of you. But
Sounds
like,
like union workers.
yeah, like I've kind of heard stories about that. Like, there's kind of an unwritten rule, but basically all stand-up comics know about it.
But I think more things like that would happen in an anarchistic society. I think a lot of things would work that way via gentlemen's agreements, social mores, and via a good punch in the nose when you're screwing up.
Yeah, and maybe something like that could work. I mean, I don't think maybe that works for stand-up comedians and it doesn't work for software. To kind of to or Jonathan's earlier point, maybe all IP is not the same or all IP is not created equal.
Hmm.
I think that's the only way to go about it is to be pragmatic about what you consider IP and what you don't consider. I think software may be in a different category from literature, movies, music.
All right, great.
But I don't know. I don't know enough about software.
What'd you say, John? Can you say it
I
again?
said great. We just solved the IP problem.
All right. By the way, we have a question from Mia for John and I regarding the TSA campaign. When you campaigned against the TSA, did anyone in libertarian anarchist circles say that there was no point putting energy into the campaign as you were never going to win or anything like that? What about you, John? Did anybody say that to you?
Nobody ever said that to me.
Oh well, they did say it to me. And it's funny how these things work because not only did I get it from anarchists and certain other libertarians, but I also got it on the other side from TSA agents who posted to the WeWon'tFly.com blog saying you'll never achieve nothing, you're a jerk, you're a whatever. It's funny sometimes how when you step out, and you try to do something, like you get hate both from the people who are you would think would like you, and from the people who you would expect to hate you,
Yeah, I think in my case, I'm not afraid to admit I wilted under the pressure of being in the spotlight. I think well before the haters came out to follow me.
I thought you did very well, and just the basic act of getting up there in an airport and saying don't touch me there, that takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, I had a lot of people pursuing me who were like, we want you to come speak to speak to this group of people. We want you to come do this show, and just it kind of got to the point for me where I didn't understand why people thought all of a sudden I was any different than anybody else who stood up for themselves. Everybody's like, well, you have this platform to come speak, and I was like, I'm nobody. I'm just some guy who didn't want to put up with this TSA agent, and I didn't like being in the spotlight kind of thing. So like I said, I kind of just receded into the shadows before the haters came out.
Well, it's funny the way people work. It's like we're all just sitting around waiting and watching to see who's going to step out and tell us what to do. And so somebody steps out or is pushed out, and we're all kind of like, ooh, what does he have to say?
Yeah,
maybe he's the person we've been waiting for,
Yeah, looking back on it, I'm not sure I would have done it the same. I'm not sure I would have done it differently. I certainly don't regret the way I handled everything. But yeah, I don't know. Knowing now what I know, or what you know what I'm trying to say. Knowing now what I didn't know then, kind of thing. I don't know if I actually would have pursued it more and tried to speak to people more. I had this platform to speak, but I didn't understand why. I didn't feel like I was any smarter or more intelligent or knew anything more about libertarianism than anybody else. I didn't think I was telling them anything new. So
Yeah,
I just didn't
I know that
understand why
feeling.
me, and I was like, well, if I'm nothing special, then I don't need to be in the spotlight here. I can just return to my own life.
All right, well, any last words, guys?
No, I enjoyed the conversation though. This was very interesting to me.
Me too. What about you, Jonathan?
Oh, it was interesting. I enjoyed it.
Excellent. I enjoyed it as well. Thanks everybody for listening. Thank
Hopefully
you,
the
John
listeners
and
enjoyed it.
Jonathan. What'd you say, John?
I said, hopefully the listeners enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks again, John and Jonathan. I think it's been really a good conversation. I enjoy these things every Friday night. Thanks, Mia, for your question, and we'll see you guys next week.